We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Welcome to Mostly Horror.
Mostly.
I'm Steve,
And I'm Sean.
and this is
the
episode. This is
guys.
we love all of our episodes unconditionally.
Mm-hmm.
But we are very lucky today to have one of the most popular actors in the industry right now for a whopping 4-minute interview.
That's a whole 4 minutes, guys.
That's a whole 4 minutes. Sydney Sweeney from the film Immaculate joins us today, as
Who?
well as...
Can you say that again? What was the name?
Sydney Sweeney.
What?
From Euphoria, The Handmaid's Tale, Anyone But You, Madam Web, and Immaculate. Joins us today. And not only do we have the pleasure of speaking with Sydney Sweeney, we also get to talk to the director of one of the most underrated Netflix original series that was canceled before it even got its time to truly shine. That series is Everything Sucks, and the director, who also directs the wonderful new film Immaculate that we're talking about today, his name is Michael Mohan, and had an absolute blast chatting with him. So very, very, very excited for this episode today.
Yeah.
The way that this will go is we'll jump into Sydney's conversation, which, again, is not very long. We talk about her intros to the genre as well as a mostly horror rec that she gives us. And then we will go into Michael's conversation. So no, you probably already know this segment. We'll hit that in our next episode, but two great conversations in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a ton to talk about, guys. There's a lot that you probably already know. We're going to be digging into it next week. But for now, like Steve said, we're going to jump right into this. And I anticipate the return of Sydney Sweeney. We got crumbs today, but eventually we will get the full 45.
I don't know if I feel as confident about that.
I am confident in that. I'm manifesting, dude. It's out here, dude. 2024. Man, I'm a manifesting girly right now. All right, it's happening. Watch it happen.
Okay. I'm about it. Not only do we have a great episode this week, but we have some wonderful ones coming up as well.
Yeah.
We can't say what just yet, but some other very hot movies are being released, and we're chatting with some of those directors coming up. So excited for you guys to check that out. But let's quickly talk about the film that we're here for. So this episode's going to come out. Anyone listening on Wondery or Apple Podcasts will get this on the 18th, but this will come out which is before the release of Immaculate, but then this episode will release wide on the 25th, which will be the Monday after it comes out. Very excited for people to check this out. We honestly don't get too spoilery, which we thought we may get into, but I would love hear some of your thoughts on the film before we get over to our conversation.
Yeah, I'm really trying to think back to the conversations that we just had. And I do think that if you wanted to, you could listen to this episode before watching the movie. But I think you're going to get the best bang for your buck if you guys see the film first. Hopefully you saw it this weekend. But I think we're going to give this the safe stamp of approval, this episode.
Rare.
With that being said, guys, this movie fucks, y'all. This movie is so good. I honestly had a blast. We got to see it together. And I was I've been talking about frustrations with religious horror and things like that, and a lot of cookie cutter stuff. We watch so many horror films that it takes a lot to kind of do something different or catch us off guard, and without trying to alter anyone's expectations or dull any knives or anything, I just want to say that this movie is very unique, and I loved it. I really did. Will be adding to the collection.
We also talk about how movies don't go hard enough sometimes. Movies need to go harder.
Yeah.
And there's some movies that the whole thing about the movie is that it just goes hard. I think of a movie like Terrifier that I'm not too
Sure.
much of a fan of. Like, that's the whole shtick.
Yeah.
But this is a movie that has a good story and good themes, and it also goes really hard.
Yeah, dude.
Like, and
Yeah.
that's, you know, one of the best. And Michael specifically talks about it in our conversation about how hard it goes.
It is a pretty movie. It's shot really well. The score is awesome. It talks about some really important things. And just like you said, dude, Sydney and Michael came out with their dukes
Yeah.
up,
Tag team off the ropes.
brass knuckles on, and they did not pull a single punch. And we can't thank them enough for it.
Any final thoughts on our conversation with Sydney and Michael before we get you over to it?
Honestly, I'm just geeked. I'm just geeked that we got to do this. I'm geeked that that we got to see this movie and that it went above and beyond, and we got to chat with the people that created it, and it just makes me grateful for what we do. And I think you guys are going to be really, really stoked with not only the film but our conversation. And I'm just happy to deliver that to everybody today. That's how I'm feeling.
On that note, we will get you guys over to our conversation first with actress and producer Sydney Sweeney. Sydney, thank you so much for joining us today. Very excited to chat with you.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk with you guys.
Yeah, we're so excited. We got to see Immaculate last night. Gotta be honest with you, I think it's the most blasphemous thing that I have seen in quite some time. And I mean that as the highest compliment. We absolutely loved it.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
We blasphemy aside, we would love to, you know, we obviously would love to deep dive this film, but we want to focus on one thing, and it's something that we like to focus on with our show, which is your intro to horror. So I know that you've talked a lot about your father taking you to Halloween horror nights and things like that, but I'm wondering if you could take us to the moment, the moment that pops into your head. You know, you walk out behind a couch and see a movie you weren't supposed to see, or maybe it was that first horror film way too early at 9 or 10, whatever it was. Could you take us to that moment? Do you remember what that is?
I do. My dad turned on Nightmare on Elm Street, and I want to say I was like 9, 10 years old. And we're watching it on the couch. And just the sheer image of Freddy is just stuck in my mind forever. I did not sleep in my own bed for weeks after that. I think my mom was gonna murder my father because of it. And but I ended up just falling in love with the genre. And after that, my dad then did start taking me to horror nights, and we'd have so much fun.
That's
Ah,
so it was something that you just kind of like latched onto. It wasn't ever like you were obviously scared for a little bit, but like once you got into the, you know, teen years, you were fine with it watching horror
Oh,
films.
but that's the thing. I still get scared and I love it. Because I'm an adrenaline junkie. So I love when my heart starts pounding. I want to hide my eyes. I don't know what's gonna happen. I enjoy that.
That's good.
absolutely.
Yeah. Was it something about like the supernatural like way that Freddy is, or was it the fingers? Was it the face? What was it that you think that really hit you?
I think it was not being able to escape him.
Mm,
It was the everybody has to sleep and you can't escape that.
Yeah,
So it's always those like Saw, like you're stuck in the world. Like whenever you're actually like stuck in this torture, that's when I'm really, really scared.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, just the nature of Freddy, it's embedding that in your mind, especially as a kid. It's terrifying. A
Yeah, because you have
100%.
to go to sleep. As a kid, you're gonna fall
Yes.
asleep and you're like, oh my God, Freddy's
Yeah.
gonna get me.
Yes.
yep,
A
not gonna
hundred
do it.
percent.
No way.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, like Steve said, we'd obviously love to break down this whole film, but we only have you so long today. Lastly, though, we'd love to ask you for a little something that we call mostly horror recommendations.
Okay.
We saw earlier today that you shared 7 movies with Fangoria that you love, all classics and personal favorites of ours, even if they're modern classics. But yeah, I was just wondering if there was maybe another horror film and maybe a non-horror film that you'd like to share and show some special love today.
What did I mean, I don't think I put The Exorcist on my list. I can't remember if I did or not, because they said I only could put 6 on there or 7. And
Yeah,
I feel like I didn't have enough space for The Exorcist. And I think that one is just
of course.
iconic and incredible and everything. It stands its test of time. Everybody's has always tried to create their own Exorcist or remake it, and that one the original is just pure gold.
Yeah, you can't touch it. Can't top it.
No.
100%.
Couldn't agree more. Well, Sydney, thank you so much for the time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you so much to Sydney for hopping on Mostly Horror for a quick little chat. Now we'll get you guys over to our conversation with director Michael Mohan. All right, we are joined today by Michael Mohan. Michael is a writer and director known for his 2021 film The Voyeurs and his criminally underrated and prematurely canceled Netflix series Everything Sucks. His new film Immaculate, starring frequent collaborator Sydney Sweeney, is in theaters on March 22nd. Michael, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk to you guys.
Yes, us as well.
We're super stoked to have you, man. Steve's been telling me about Everything Sucks for like years now.
Since 2018, man.
Yeah,
saw it as soon as it came out.
Yeah.
Oh, man,
So
that warms my heart.
we'll jump into a little bit of that in a bit, but we want to start off our interview by looking at the way back. We want to ask you a question that we love to ask every guest that we bring on. We're really curious about your intros to the genre. Maybe even not necessarily the first horror film you saw, but the first moment you were exposed to something as a little kid. Maybe when you peeked from behind the couch and saw something you weren't supposed to, or had an older adult show you something. Do you have anything like that you can share?
Yeah,
with
the
us
thing
today?
that scared me the most was, so growing up, my father worked for a subsidiary of Magnavox.
Okay.
And we didn't have an Atari. We had this system called the Odyssey 2, which was like a video. It was like, like I think of that meme where it's like, Mom, can we have Atari? It's like, we have Atari at home, Odyssey 2. And there was a cover to one of the video games that featured this like evil gorilla on it. And my mom had to like put tape over it so that I couldn't see it because I was too scared of it. Like when I was a kid, I was terrified of horror movies. I remember like when we would go to video stores, I would have to avoid that section of the video store. I remember one time we went to the movie theater and we were supposed to go see Adventures in Babysitting. And I was too scared that there might be horror trailers in front of it because it was PG-13.
Yeah.
And so we ended up going to see Benji the Hunted instead, and it totally sucked. But I was the kind of kid who was like terrified of horror films. And so I came to it much later, like way later than most. I mean, I think, growing up in the 90s, the gateway was Scream, going to see Scream with my friends. And I remember the phenomenon of Scream where, it came out and it wasn't like a big deal, but it then like sort of the word of mouth built. And then that turned into, I Know What You Did Last Summer, the whole slew of films that sort of spun off from that. And so as a film lover, that's where it sort of began for me. And as a filmmaker, it was in college and seeing Halloween and just being like, this craft, like the craft of this movie is unfucking, oh, can I swear?
Yes. Absolutely.
Unbelievable, the craft of that movie. It's a movie where, as a filmmaker, the thing about horror is that it's all technique. It's not like, you don't shoot it like a traditional drama. You can't. Like, you have to be really methodical with where you're placing the camera and the timing and utilizing negative space and shadows and all of that. And so I've been dying to make my own horror movie since then, and finally I had my chance.
Yeah.
And nailed it. Really quick, I want to say I love that the early memory isn't even like a movie; it's an image. I think I might have found it. Monkey Shines or Monkey Shines.
Shines.
Yeah.
Oh God.
There you go.
Yeah.
That would freak me out. I It
Yeah.
reminds me, I saw Bare Naked Ladies' Stunt 1998 album Stunt,
Uh-huh.
and the artwork for Stunt is terrifying. I saw it on a jukebox and I couldn't even look at it, but then I'd have to go back and look at it. So I just wanted to say that resonated very strongly with me.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Wow. I never knew that about you, Sean. That's
Yeah, I think I brought it up
Interesting.
one other time, but it was
Yeah.
a long time ago.
all right. It's been 1 week since I found that out about you.
But
Anyways, well, before you got into horror, I do want to touch on something that I mentioned in your intro. I want to talk about Everything Sucks.
Okay.
Because
awesome.
2018, I remember that show came out, and I'm a sucker for a coming of age story, but I think that show has so much to it. It has a depth to it in every single character. It even has this, innate story about filmmaking in it as well. And as a lover of film and TV, that was beautiful to see. I'm really curious now, 6 years now since it's come out. Obviously, it wasn't picked up for a second season, but you've seen this nonstop, whether it's articles being written about shows that were canceled before their prime, or people just talking about it online. I would love if you could talk about, what it's like to have a show that maybe didn't get the extension that it should have gotten, but still has, this love for it years down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I only can see the positive in it. It was
Yeah.
very sad in the moment, but how many people get the chance to create a show like that and have it be seen all across the world? I mean, the thing that matters the most to me is that, I still get messages from, like, actually quite a few from the Philippines, honestly, of teenagers who use the show as a tool to, they show the show to their parents, and it's how they are able to come out to their parents, and especially growing up in the 90s, there's the only gay representation that we had was Pedro Zamora on The Real World. It was a reality show, and when I was a kid, I wasn't able to embrace my own sexuality, and uh, all the representation that we had was like people who, like, spoke a certain way and, like, went to dance clubs. I mean, I hate to reduce it to that, but that's
Yeah.
all that you saw on TV, and you never
Yeah.
saw, like, these sensitive, quiet people, and so the fact that I created a show that could be the representation that I would have loved as a kid, it's one of the greatest honors of my career. So even though we didn't get a second season, just the fact that I was able to make a difference in some of these kids' lives in this, like, very real way, I mean, it's great. So, and the summer we made that show, and so much of the credit also goes to, I didn't create the show myself. I created it with Ben York Jones, who, my dear friend. If it weren't for him, this show wouldn't exist. If it weren't for him, I would have never met Sydney Sweeney, and none of these movies would have existed. So he deserves a lot of the credit, as well as the casting director, Amy Renee, who is wonderful. She scoured the earth trying to find those kids, a mix of professional actors, and kids who were just sort of starting out and maybe had done some local theater. The alchemy of that cast and that crew over that summer is something that, like, it was one of the best summers of my life. So no matter what happened, even though the show didn't get renewed, I mean, I only view it as this very positive thing in my life. And so, it's sad we didn't get to make more of it, but I'm still grateful.
Yeah. And it's a lasting impact, which I think is something that there's, I hate reducing things to the word content, but, like, there's a lot of content that comes out, and a lot of it doesn't have a lasting impact. So it's great that it does. On the Sydney Sweeney note, what was that? Obviously you've done, 3 projects with her now, including Immaculate. This is back. I could be wrong, but before Euphoria, I think, like, concurrently with Handmaid's Tale, if I'm correct. It was kind of like earlier on. What was that like? What was, early Sydney Sweeney, 6 years ago like?
Yeah, she's no different. I mean, honestly, one of the things, I'm very fortunate in that I get to see, I know this whole other side to Sydney that people don't know. And It's no surprise to me that it's no surprise that that her career has blossomed in the way that it has. She's amazing. She's like really an amazing person. When we were shooting, she was 19 years old, and she was actually the oldest member of the cast, but she was able to sort of take everybody under her wing. So like she was the one, if someone needed to rehearse lines, she was there with the sides, helping them practice. On the weekends, she would organize field trips. And, because she was the cool older sister who also had wheels. So they would like travel around Oregon together, when she wasn't shooting her other show on the weekends. She would take Quinn Liebling, who was played the character of Tyler. They would always go to this Italian restaurant they were obsessed with called Bugatti's. And they just, whenever they had a good day of shooting, they'd be like, it's time to go to Bugatti's, And so it was kind of great. She was like the camp counselor,
Yeah.
But then also, like, in addition to that, like, I saw her like she would come in on her off days and like sit with the camera crew and like ask them questions about lenses. She would sit with with our Tyler, our sound recordist, and ask him about microphones. And I could even see then that she was a true cinephile. She cared about craft. And so the fact that she's producing now, it's like she's done the work. She's not just adding her name on it because now she has a lot more influence. Like, she actually wants to produce because she loves what we do.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's sounds just like such a great experience and so powerful, and it's also a perfect segue into Immaculate. We've heard that April 29th, I couldn't say the year, but it's 5:14 a.m. and you get a text message from Sydney asking, would you be interested in doing a horror thriller film? Can you talk about that and sort of the beginning, like the birth of Immaculate?
Yeah. So after we made The Voyeurs, that just went so well. And, I think we just have this it's just really easy. It's a really easy rapport. It's not just her, like the filmmaking family is a lot bigger than just me and her.
Mm-hmm.
Elisha Christian, who was my roommate in college, he's our cinematographer and our good friend. Adam Reamer, who was the production designer on Everything Sucks, I brought him along to everything. And so, like, we're sort of the core group, and there's other people who've been brought into the family, like Will Bates, our composer. And when she approached, so after Voyeurs, we were looking for another project to do together, and she had sent me a couple scripts that I read that I, like, if I'm going to sign on to do a movie, no matter who it's for, I want to make sure I can like elevate it and really bring something to it. It has to be in my bones. I'm going to be working on it for 2 years,
Right.
Of course.
I'm going to be having conversations like this where I need to feel like really fucking jazzed about it.
Yeah.
And so there were scripts that she sent that were awesome, but I was like, another director will do a better job with this.
Okay.
But this script, when she sent me this one, I had been already like sort of writing. I had written a couple of horror scripts that I was thinking about doing, and then I read this, and I was really scared because she was definitely, unlike the other ones, she was definitely making this one. She was like, I have this little window in my schedule, and I'm just trying to will this into existence, but I have to be done by this date because I'm going to go to Australia and shoot this movie called Anyone But You, which, I was like, come on, don't go shoot that movie. Let's just do this one,
Glenn Powell can wait.
Yeah, exactly. Sony Pictures can wait.
Yeah.
But she wanted to do it independently. And, as someone who, Everything Sucks was a small, scrappy production. It was the lowest budget show Netflix had ever done.
Wow.
And, prior to that, I had made low budget independent films. Like my first film was $21,000. My second film was like $500,000. And this wasn't low budget, but the time constraints were, is something I'm comfortable doing. And in some ways it's almost freeing because then you're just relying on your instincts.
Yeah.
But I still needed to love the script. So I opened it up, and when I got to the reveal that happens midway through, I was just like, whoa, okay, I did not see that coming. And, The Voyeurs, I love writing movies with twists. I think the architecture of writing a twist is very hard to pull off. And I was just like, oh, this is all perfectly set up, but I just didn't see it coming. And when I finished reading it, I was like, okay, I do want to work on this script. It was very well written, but it was originally written as a studio movie, and so it did take some conservative approaches, especially with the ending. And also the character was a high school student, and I wanted to age it up so that it matched Sydney's age, and so we decided to change her into a nun, and so that one decision changed everything except for the fundamental architecture, the twist still worked, but how we all of that stuff. And then I wanted to change the ending because the ending was too soft and I wanted to go hard.
You certainly did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had the freedom to, and I feel I say this all the time, Everything Sucks was kind of like this weird anomaly for me, but now ever since making that and the fact that it didn't get renewed, the one thing I do take with me is that I just want to create films that are fucking bold, that take chances. That I don't want to even say that take risks, because I don't think that it's risky to make films that are bold. I think that's what audiences want, know? And so if I can continue to just establish my voice as someone who makes these movies that sort of go to these crazy fucked up places, if that can turn commercial, then suddenly I at least that's what I want as a viewer. When I go to the movies, I want to be surprised. I want if I'm going to see a horror movie, I don't want them to push the envelope. I want them to rip it to shreds, And so I'm often, I love all horror movies, I think that's the brilliance of the genre, right? Is that, it's just as fun to talk about Death Spa as it is to talk about Immaculate. And, but for this one, I was like, I've got Sydney. She can do anything. So let's make this the most unhinged performance she's ever done,
Yeah. And it is pushing. I mean, I've seen Sydney in a lot of things, all the things that we've spoken about, Euphoria, obviously. And this is definitely, you see the range, and it's well deserved as well. I am curious a couple of things. So you talking about kind of aging up and making her a nun. So she was a student. She was in a boarding school, if I'm correct, right?
So how it was before, and so Andrew wrote this. He started writing this 18 years ago, and so So the path of this film is crazy. So he wrote it 18 years ago, and the first draft, and eventually got involved with a different director at a it was being made for a studio, right? And it was about a high school student whose parents had died. And then as she's dealing with her past trauma, she goes to this boarding school that's in a convent and then gets pregnant, right?
Got it. Okay.
And so we've all seen, I mean, I feel like every horror movie is about past trauma.
Yeah.
And I don't have past trauma. I don't have that in my life. I mean, there are things that have happened to me that are fucked up, but it's nothing like that.
Yeah.
So I couldn't really relate to it, but also it's every movie, Yeah. So to me, the core principle was just like the fact that she's pregnant with the second coming of Jesus. I'm like, well, what would be the most tortured person that could happen to? What's the most interesting character? It was never about like, let's make a nun movie. It was more about like, what's the most interesting character to see this happen to? And by making her a nun, that was the most interesting thing to me. Also, Sydney's known for it also was the easiest way to be like, oh yeah, and Sydney Sweeney's a virgin, and you believe it.
We're gonna cover her head to toe. Yeah. That's a fair way to go about that, I feel like. I also I love that, and I think it makes perfect sense, and it adds this whole other layer, I think, that I think Sean will jump into in a second. I am curious, so you're roommates with Elijah in college, because I know him from Kogonada's Columbus. Night House is phenomenal. What is that like? There's a lot of gorgeous shots in this. So kind of crafting. Are you letting him cook? Like, what does that kind of look like?
Both of us. I mean, it is both of us. Like to me, I think there's, especially after Voyeurs, I mean, we've always sort of tried to bring a sense of elegance to our work. Like, our first film was this $21,000 movie called One Too Many Mornings that we shot on nights and weekends over 2 years. And we were fortunate enough to play at Sundance. And, the MO with that film was like, it was around the time of Mumblecore, which was very inspiring to me because I was like, oh, this is a path to how I can actually get a movie made. Because,
Yes.
I didn't grow up with connections in Hollywood. I come from a very blue collar background. I didn't know how to raise more than $21,000, you know? And so we were just like, let's just fucking make this and let's make it beautiful. And so we took our time. We spent time lighting it. But it was still a tiny crew. Like there were many scenes where he was operating the camera. I was pushing a suitcase dolly and holding the boom at the same time,
Yeah.
And I think with everything we've done, we've just tried to challenge ourselves with that. And now that I'm realizing how important genre is to me, I'm just really into the idea of making films that are super lurid and super, envelope pushing, but doing it with a little bit more sophistication. Like when you think about like a film like The Exorcist, right? Which, all-time classic, everybody's talked about it forever and ever, but it's still like, it can't be understated. Like there's a scene where a young girl is like basically stabbing her vagina with a crucifix, right?
Yeah.
Like that's in that movie.
Yeah.
But yet that's considered like a very high art, like that's considered, classy.
Yes.
And so that to me is like, there's an ingredient missing from our current cinematic landscape. And I think that's it. It's this balance of the lurid with the elegant, that he and I think we're just, I don't know, it just interests us. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very elegant. That is for sure. Yeah.
100%. And there's I love good juxtaposition, especially in horror. And there's something about like really pretty shots and then just and elegance and then being willing to go to the very dark places that you go in this movie. We love, I love a grindhouse flick. I love a found footage flick, but this is just as important and amazing. And yeah, not as served right now.
It also I think it also serves the story just because, I grew up Catholic, right? And like I was even like the leader of our youth group, and it was it was hardcore. Like we would sometimes, like there was a weekend where we took all these heavy metal CDs and we burned them in effigy because we were worried there were satanic messages on them backwards. Like it was that kind of situation,
Love
like
that.
I was a part of that.
Right.
And there is this sense like we would like, I mean, I don't want to say this negatively because I don't want people who are religious, like I want them to engage with this film. I really do.
Sure.
In fact, we brought an actual nun to the screening, to our premiere yesterday, and she took Sydney aside and she was like, "This is what the Catholic Church needs," and I couldn't believe it, right? Which is like super win. But when I was involved in the church, there's a sense of like majesty to it. There's a sense of power, and so I think with the cinematography and with Adam Reamer's production design and the locations we chose, I was also just trying to create that sense of like the sense of God, the presence of God, within our like within how we shot it.
Okay, you perfectly are leading me up to the things that I want to bring up. First off, I have to say that I love the idea of you with like a guitar singing Hillsong songs and then and then getting here. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, Michael W. Smith was our person. Was that person. Michael W. Smith, Amy Grant.
Fair.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's so great. Yeah, when we spoke with Sydney yesterday, I actually told her that this film is probably the most blasphemous thing I've seen in a long time, and I mean that as the highest compliment on my end.
Sure.
And yeah, I'm just really curious. It seems like religious horror right now just doesn't seem to have the impact that it used to, especially that of like Christian and Catholic faith. We have our theories about why that might be true, but we're curious about yours, especially with everything that you just said and knowing that it wasn't necessarily the seed, of this movie.
Well, so. I think to me, like, I love all horror movies. I see them all. All. I have a shelf like yours, Steve, behind you. Mm-hmm. People can't see. He's got a whole shelf of physical media. It's fucking beautiful. That's how people should watch movies.
Agreed.
I have the same thing. In fact, I just got the Second Sight edition of High Tension. I'm so excited to dive into it. Nice. Anyway, one of the things about, I think, a lot of the modern religious horror movies is that they're all building to a climax where the religion, where the nuns have to defeat a creature made out of ones and zeros,
Yeah.
and with this, it's like it's just fucking brutal. There's no CG, there's nothing like that. It's literally like a woman fucking fighting to live,
Yeah.
and it's primal, and it's for me, those films they're fun, they're totally fun, and they might provide some clever jump scares, but I don't feel a sense of catharsis at the end,
Yeah.
and that's what we were trying to build towards. In terms of the blasphemy, I think it's cool if people call it blasphemous, because then it makes other people curious about seeing it.
Sure.
I don't want to offend religious people, I genuinely don't. I think one of so growing up Catholic, my town was about 30 minutes outside of where the events of Spotlight took place. So
Boston,
anyone
right?
who's Catholic, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I grew up in a town called Norton, and that was bad. I think we all agree that was bad, and oftentimes we sort of have to reconcile our own feelings, what the church preaches with what we think is right. And it's okay to not be aligned, in the same way that, in Ireland recently, they just passed a bill allowing gay marriage, even though the Catholic Church said, please don't vote for this. 70% of Ireland's Catholic. So they were able to do that. They were able to go, you know what? Yes, I'm devout. Yes, I believe in God, but I don't believe, I actually don't believe that the modern God would agree with this ruling. And to me, that gives me hope that there is we can have a more nuanced relationship with what we believe in. And so my hope with the film is that it inspires people to think about that. And I think the only way we can do that is if we're fucking loud and if we make a real impact. And yeah, sure, people will call it blasphemous. Awesome. Do that. That'll encourage more people to engage with it. Just check it out and go, is this blasphemous? What do I feel about it?
Yeah.
And that's also what horror movies do too, is like you go to horror movies and you debate whether it was good or not. Like you debate the themes of the film, or, that's just, it's what genre was made for,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that dialogue.
that's my hope.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I say blasphemous, especially about this one, I'm definitely not meaning like shocking or aggressive
It is.
against religious people. Yes, but I just mean like it's not like you're just sticking a middle finger up, to religious people for the sake of it. It's you're talking about some really serious things here.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also like some priests are bad.
100%.
Like
Yeah,
it's just
of course.
that simple. Some priests are bad,
Yeah.
and the priest in this movie is bad. Does he
Yes.
represent all priests? No, but this priest is, he's,
Right.
he's not a good one,
and
Yeah.
and religious or not, people that are willing to do terrible things, for extreme ideas like that is just not a great thing. 100%.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Exactly.
I am curious. You said, I will say it sounds like the nun that you brought in is maybe one of the more
She's a
liberal leaning
liberal nun.
nuns.
Yeah. She's actually a TikTok star too. If you look
Oh,
up
fuck yeah.
Sister Mary Blaze, there's
Sister
this really
Mary
great
Blaze.
video where it's like she's dancing with Michael Myers set to Ariana Grande. It's unbelievable.
I'll watch it as soon as
Amazing.
It's
Yeah.
great. Well, so I am curious because I'm a fan of Verhoeven put out Benedetta a couple of years ago, which I see some parallels to not parallels, but similarities in this film. I am curious if there's, because again, like, you said people will pull out different themes, but there's definitely themes of like body autonomy in this and things of that nature. So I am curious if there have been any, obviously it's not a wide release, for a couple of days, but if there's been any backlash or anything from people that have screened it so far.
Not yet. But it's still early days, and I feel like every audience we've showed it to has been fairly liberal,
Sure.
Yeah.
I think, no matter what people's political views are, I think, Sydney's performance is just undeniable, so like no matter where you fall, you watch it and you're going like, fuck, she's giving her all.
Yeah.
And I do hope that, like, to me, the movie is when we were approaching this, we wanted to be delicate because we don't want this to seem like a message movie, because nobody wants to go to the movies to be preached at. Like, they want to go for a good time. And so, really it's a roller coaster ride first and foremost, and all of that other stuff is another layer if people want to engage on it in that level, but they don't have to,
Yeah. No, I love that sentiment. Because discourse is always going to be discourse. Like, it's always going to happen.
Exactly.
And you're just like, enjoy this shit.
Look, if Sydney sneezes, Us Weekly writes like 5 articles about it, And so
something's about to happen.
If Sydney's involved in something, there's discourse. It doesn't matter.
Sure. I was telling Sean, we were waiting for this movie to play, and I was like, I'm pretty sure if you went on IMDb, she's like number 1 or number 2 on the star meter, like thing that they have. She was number 2. I was like, all right, this is all
really.
It's I mean, she's
so cool.
She's saying she's having a moment this year alone is an understatement. I do want to, as you can see with the physical media behind me, I do kind of want to lean into some of the more filmmakery aspects of this. Sure. 2 things I'm curious about. So the first one, we actually haven't gone too deep in spoilers in this, which is fine. And this one's not going to be that much of a spoiler, but there is a scene in this film where the candle continuity is just absolutely beautiful. And that's a very like specific thing. And you talking about shooting this in a small time frame, maybe on a smaller budget. I'm curious the emphasis on details put into this, because it's something where I noticed like Sydney's holding a candle for a long time, and you can see the progression from scene to scene of the candle getting smaller and smaller. I'm like, this is great.
I can tell you, you know what that is? That is honestly, that's what it's like shooting in Italy. Like, the crews there, they care so much about their craft. And you do move a little bit slower because of it. We also, there's a language barrier that also is, that's a tricky thing to navigate, but it's, you do it, but they are just like so on it. I'll also say that like early on in the shoot, we were really lucky because, that scene where she's transformed into the Madonna image and the camera's pulling out, we needed that music so that everyone in the audience could lip sync to it. And so Will Bates, prior to the shoot, or sort of at the very, very, very beginning of the shoot, he had composed what we called the Te Deum. And on one of our early days on set, I had gotten the file and I was like, oh shit, let's check this out. And so I listened to it on headphones privately, and I just had chills. And so I went over to the sound department. I was like, hey, can you hook this up? Can we just I know this is going to be a time suck, but we need to stop production and I need everybody to hear this. And so we connected my phone to the speaker and I played it nice and loud, and the whole cast and crew were there. And we were just standing in silence, listening to this incredible piece of music that he created. And I think at that moment, the crew also locked in and went, oh, wow, this is going to be something different. This is going to be something special. And so, Will's music also helped communicate that level of like, we're going to it's a grimy horror movie, but like, let's make this a cut above,
Yeah.
So
absolutely. I want to say I don't have a specific question, I guess, but I want to applaud the music. Take a moment to applaud it. It's something I 100% noticed while watching, but without it stealing the show. It's like it wasn't just hidden in the background, but it wasn't. No, it was perfect. It was. I can't wait to listen to the soundtrack. I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's coming out on Friday too, so you'll be able to stream it on Spotify. Fun fact about Will Bates. Do you watch Hammer horror at all?
I've seen. I'm not an expert by any means.
Have you ever seen Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde?
No.
No. Okay. Never mind. Anyways, Will's dad actually was a very famous Hammer horror actor, and he plays both Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. And
wow.
If you look up Ralph Bates, you'll see his whole filmography, and he's done like tons of Hammer horror. So it's in his blood. And Will's mom was even in A Clockwork Orange, so yeah, it's pretty amazing.
He was made for this.
He really is. And he's like the best human. The music was one of those things, when making a movie, every single thing goes wrong. So that when something's going right, I just take the win. And when we heard the music that he created, I was just like, yeah, this is right. Just keep going. Like, I'm not going to lean into your instincts. Just keep going. And, there were things we had to modulate. Like Sorry, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here,
No,
but like
do it.
we didn't
Yeah.
know whether or not synths would have a place in the movie. Like we had talked about the beginning of The Shining and sort of how that worked, and for a minute there, we did not have synths, and we actually struggle at a certain point. When we were editing the movie, people were not sure what time period it was set in, and they thought it was set in the past. And then there's one moment that I could not get around where where a character has to answer a cell phone call.
Yeah.
And so we were like, oh shoot. Like, and then suddenly people were like, how did he have a cell phone? I thought it was in the past. And then it took them out of the movie in a moment where they needed to be sucked in. And so we had to like add a scene back in at the, like when she's picked up at the airport, that wasn't originally in the movie. And so I put it back in the movie just so that people could see like, hey, there's people here with cell phones. We live in that world. But then we also, when we put the synths back in, which we called the Wendy Carloses, which you hear in that opening driving sequence, that also somehow made the score a little bit less like it was always influenced by old hymns, but adding the synth sort of made it off kilter. So
Okay.
sorry,
Yeah.
that was a little detour.
No, it's great. It like modernized it a bit too, because I will say it's when I saw the cell phone scene, I went, oh, but then my brain
still happens.
Well, my brain did this thing where it's like you just assume because it's mostly set at a nunnery that like it's old, but there's still, you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where it's just an assumption. Like there's no reason to not think that it's in cell phone times, you know?
I also think it's just hard to imagine that there are modern nuns, but there are, you know, like, it's so hard to imagine that someone who's, you know, who looks and sounds like Sydney would actually choose to be a nun in this modern age, but they do exist, you know?
Yeah.
We're
especially if they're from Detroit.
That's
a way to get there.
They're not from Detroit. They're from Detroit.
Detroit. We're gonna have to get you and Will back on to deep dive Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. I just had to throw that out there.
Absolutely. Well, his dad is no longer with us, so unfortunately, his dad won't be able to join us. But yeah, Will. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Yeah,
perfect.
Hell yeah. I also one other question, kind of to wrap things up with Immaculate. One of the themes in this, and something that a lot of the nuns say is suffering is love, right? Like that's like a thing. You're a filmmaker. I'm sure there's a love for filmmaking, but you just said, you know, one of the things when making a movie is everything goes wrong. I'm curious what the term or the phrase suffering is love means to you as a filmmaker when making these projects.
Oh God. I mean, it's, you sacrifice so much to make a movie, you know, like when, you know, for me, I've got 2 kids. Right. And so, when I have yet to work on like a Marvel movie where I can like fly my kids out all the time, you know, like where there's all these perks. And so whenever I make something, you know, like in this case, I had to leave my kids and my wife for 4 months. I didn't see them, you know, my wife had to take care of them by herself, you know, and that's part of it, you know. I think also your health, great. It's so physically exhausting. You're so stressed out. I started on the voyeurs when we were in prep. Like I would go back to my room, and when I would shower, just like chunks of hair would be falling out. It was kind of like that scene in The Craft, you know?
Wow.
And now, you know, because of that movie, I have a bald spot that's weirdly, if you look at it, if it's in the right, if I take a shower, weirdly, it's in the shape of a yak. So I have a yak-shaped bald spot because of the voyeurs. I fucked up my feet making this movie because we were standing on marble floors, so I got plantar fasciitis. And so but it's all I know how to do. It's the greatest job in the world. It's fucking amazing that like this thing that I made is going to be seen by people all across the world. So it's totally worth it. I just probably am going to die a lot sooner than most people.
Suffering for your art, 100%.
Yeah. Suffering is love. That's what it is.
Love.
What a great answer.
Yeah.
We only have so much time with you, Michael.
Sure.
I do want to ask another thing before we get into Rex. I saw in another interview you expressed a friendship with David Lowery. We recently had
the great
David on the show.
Yeah.
It was great conversation. One of the things that we really talked about with David was adaptation. You know, with David specifically, you know, everything from remakes to taking on classics like Arthurian. Is that the right
Arthurian.
word for Arthurian?
There you go.
Yeah, stuff like that. I'm just curious if you could adapt any source material
Yeah.
into a film. Do you have anything in mind that you would want to do that you're allowed to talk about?
Yeah. I mean, can I talk about a remake?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is gonna be completely out of left field. So this is never going to happen. So by the way, this this is just a dream. But
You're
there's
speaking it into existence right now.
There's a movie from 1980 called The Apple. It's Menachem Golan, who went on to direct the great Sylvester Stallone movie Over the Top. It's a musical. It's from 1980, but it's set in the future, 1994, where the world has been overtaken with evil disco. It's glam. I love the 80s version of what the future is, because it's nothing like what it turned out to be.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I could remake that movie with Lady Gaga, that is my absolute dream project.
Wow.
One time I had a meeting at MGM because they were controlling the rights. They were doing a remake of Valley Girl, and I was like, yeah, like this is cool and all that you're remaking Valley Girl, but like what you really should be remaking is The Apple. And then they proceeded to never call me back. So, but that's my absolute dream project, would be remaking The Apple with Lady Gaga. So
give Immaculate a few weeks to shake the world.
Yeah.
And then call them again. All right, push that button again. Just be
they don't get to do like Neon. Neon will do something. This is a perfect Neon project or
I have
A24
to write
project.
my own. Yeah.
That's so good. I definitely have to watch The Apple now. Even from the poster, it looks wonderful.
Looking at the images,
if you can see it in a theater, that's the best way to see it.
Okay.
And if you can't, just see it like as like just don't see it sober. Is my recommendation.
Oh no. Darn. I guess if you insist.
Yeah.
Michael said it. Yeah, Michael told us to do it. Well, Michael, we absolutely, again, Sean and I can't express enough how much we love Immaculate. We're really excited for everyone to see it. Before we let you go, though, we do want to wrap this up the way that we do with most of our conversations, with mostly horror recommendations. So what we're looking for is a horror film or two if you want, as well as a non-horror film that you would recommend to our listeners if you would indulge us.
Yeah. Okay. So so this is tricky. I keep getting asked this question, and I don't want to give the same answer to every single outlet. I will say my favorite horror film of all time is Funny Games, the Michael Haneke movie.
The original or the remake?
Oh, the original.
Okay.
The remake is just, it's the same, it's the same movie.
I mean, but it's still Haneke, so.
Yeah, I mean, what I love about that movie is that, like, you're in the hands of a maniac. When that middle twist happens, you're just like, I didn't know that a movie could do this.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give a recommendation that's like way out of left field, and that's the film Graduation Day from 1981. It's an early slasher, but it's actually structured more like a giallo. It's got a killer soundtrack, and it's one of those movies where if you weren't it's one of those movies where if you didn't, you would think that the editor was on cocaine when he made it, but it was shot on film, so obviously he wasn't, because it took a lot of diligence to make a very quickly cut movie. And it's kind of like Dazed and Confused, but as a slasher. Oh, and one other fun fact is that one of the actresses who was cast in the movie, she didn't want to do the nudity, so they just recast her with Linnea Quigley. And so one of the characters literally changes actors in the middle of the film and then changes back. I love it.
For the sake of nudity?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, she was supposed to do a nude scene, and I mean, nowadays you could never do this. You just don't shoot the nude scene. But back then, they just they cut her, and then they bring in another actor that kind of sort of looked like her. And then for the non horror film, I want to recommend a film that's coming out soon called Sing Sing, starring Coleman Domingo. I just saw it at South by Southwest, and literally everybody was like, we were ugly crying at the end of the movie out of happiness. It's one of the most joyous experiences you'll have in a theater this year. If you like films like Short Term 12, it kind of has that kind of sensitive vibe. And it's about a drama club that's set within a prison, and just so beautiful. So
wow.
Okay.
Great
rec. I'm bummed I missed that at South by, but I am
Yeah.
excited to see it when it
Yeah.
comes out.
Definitely opening day.
Awesome, Michael. Well, again, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get you back on for Dr. Jekyll, Sister Hyde sometime soon. All right. Thank you so much to Michael Mohan for hopping on, and thank you guys for checking out that conversation. Thank you again to Sydney Sweeney for taking the time to chat with us earlier in this episode. It's now time for our mostly horror recommendations of the week. We can hit these ones pretty quick because we had a good 2 conversations in this episode. Sean, you want to go first?
Sure.
You want to take a little first? No,
I'll do it.
go?
So mine is something that we brought up, when it had first come out. But I don't know that either of us ever saw it. I don't think I remember you talking about it. And it was always on my list. I've seen nothing, or I've heard nothing but good things about it. But surprisingly, it seems to have disappeared from the conversation, and I'm curious as to why. I finally started the show Them that came out. Did you ever watch that? Did you ever check that out?
Yes. I watched the first episode, and yeah, I honestly didn't really get into it.
No. Okay.
But that's not
interesting.
Yeah.
It's I guess I think I'm like 2 or 3 episodes in now.
Mhm.
I haven't gotten to watch for a couple days because we've been very busy, like we mentioned at the beginning of this episode. But I'm loving it, honestly. It's not absolutely perfect. There are things about the edit, and specifically the edit around scares so far, that have been odd to me. But for the most part, from performance to the way that it's shot, the way that they play, like their opening sequence, and yeah, just building of tension and where I see it going, I have been immensely enjoying it, and I'm very excited to finish. I might get to the end of it and be like, maybe I felt that they dropped the ball or something, but I had only heard positive things. I think Stephen King's been talking about everything lately, but he was saying that it's like genuinely terrifying, and I can feel like I'm definitely like, the story and the characters are incredibly compelling, and I am at unease for sure. So enjoying that so far. And yeah, if you guys have watched it all the way through, let us know what you think. Please don't spoil it. If you're going to send me an email, please don't spoil it. I am asking you nicely. But
I remember liking it because one of the girls from Us is in it, and Allison Pill is in it. I should give it another shot because it didn't really hit the first episode, but maybe I was just focused on something else or something. I could definitely try it again.
Sure. Yeah. Let me know if you do jump back into it. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, I just wish it had a different name. It came out around the time as Us, and then there's Them. I don't know. Sure.
Yeah, it came out a bit after. I wonder if that was a coincidence, but I will also say it makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
Like it is definitely very fitting. Just for anyone who might not know, I feel like we should do this more. The premise
if you want to know about something we're talking about, you look it up, damn it.
Straight up, dude. We really should be better at that, probably. But Them is set in 1953, and it follows a Black family who moves from North Carolina to an all-white neighborhood in Los Angeles during the Second Great Migration. The family's idyllic home slowly transforms into an epicenter of evil forces next door and otherworldly that threaten to haunt, ravage, and destroy them. And it goes there, man. It goes there, and the performances are great. So,
all right, maybe I'll give it a shot. I'm currently actually, this will be a rec. This will be I'll segue into my recs now.
Okay, perfect.
Because I'm in the middle of the new season of Blown Away, which is Netflix's glass blowing competition show. Really fucking cool. If you're ever interested in glass blowing, I love a good competition show. It's honestly crazy what the people make out of glass.
Yeah,
especially in this show.
Really quick, I just want to say it's such a cool art form. When in at the college that I went to, the art school I went to, they had a whole glass blowing like sector of campus with like the big fucking ovens, and you just see you'd walk by, it's hot as shit, and it is really impressive what those artists do.
It's wild watching and blown away. It's like it's 30-minute episodes. It's just people blowing glass, they make really cool shit. So new season out now on Netflix. The rec that I will give actually this week is a film I'm probably going to talk about more in the coming months. I was lucky enough to go to South by Southwest recently for work, and after long days of marketing panels and panels about AI and all this stuff, I did have the opportunity to catch a couple films. The film that I will quickly recommend I'm recommending that you all look out for this film when it comes out, which I believe is May 3rd through A24. I Saw the TV Glow.
Yeah.
This is Jane Schoenbrun's new movie. Jane did We're All Going to the World's Fair, which I know Sean was not a big fan of. One of my favorite horror films in the past couple of years. And this film is just another level for Jane, in both storytelling and production design. The music in this, like Jane really set out. Luckily, I was lucky enough to see them do a Q&A after the screening, and they talked about how they really just wanted to make a film with a great soundtrack as well. Like they loved films that had these wonderful soundtracks that lasted the test of time.
Me too.
The soundtrack is so good. It's just amazing. And so I don't want to go into it too much because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone listening, because obviously it isn't out yet, wide release. But as soon as you're able to, on May 3rd, watch I Saw the TV Glow. I think this is going to be a new cult classic for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm the limited things that I have seen for it have me very excited. I'm incredibly jealous that you got to see it. I also want to say, in regard to just a reminder, in regard to We're All Going to the World's Fair, I am definitely excited for Jane's like career. I feel like there is a ton of potential there. And for me, it was just for my taste. I felt like it talks about so many important things, and I was invested, and I just didn't get the payoff that my taste specifically was looking for. So just want to stress, not putting that movie down, and I'm beyond excited for I Saw the TV Glow, and I'm expecting to love it, frankly.
It is,
but I don't know yet.
It is so cool. Just a big fan. So that's I'm going to call it a pre-rec because it hasn't come out yet, but I'm going to recommend that everyone prepares
be ready
for that to come out. So on that note, are you excited for that movie? Did you see Immaculate? Did you like it? Did you watch them? Don't spoil anything, but tell us. mostlyhorrormovienight@gmail.com. I'm also curious, has anyone seen Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, the film that Michael talked about in our conversation? I would love to know anything more about that film. Let us know at the email that I just said. You can find us on Instagram at mostlyhorrorpod, TikTok and Twitter at mostlyhorror. I'm everywhere at Steven is Average. Sean's on all the socials at Hypocrite Inc. or hypocrite.inc. That's all we got for you this week. We'll catch you next time.
Goodbye.